How's it going, guys? This is notes for Monday on November 11th. The plan is still to have the mid-unit quiz on the 20s this coming Thursday, so I do want to give you some notes while I'm out so I don't get that far behind. So whether you pay attention or not, take notes or not, sleep or not, you're still going to get these notes, and I'll post them to YouTube and Moodle after the class is done. But make sure that you get these done today because we're going to resume with the notes leave off tonight or on this video before I get to the for Tuesday and Wednesday. So when we come back Tuesday and Wednesday, we're finishing up, getting ready to quiz Thursday. Okay. So I don't have my PowerPoint here, unfortunately, and this is just going to do with suffices, but I'm going to use the outline kind of where we left off. We were talking about automobiles on Thursday, but we were just talking about how automobiles, in a lot of ways, have a lot of impact in the 1920s. We know that a lot more Americans are able to buy them now. That's the big impact of Henry Ford, as well as mass production in the assembly line. But we also talked about how it has other impacts in other areas, on as far as like developing other businesses like mechanic shops and gas stations. It allows people to travel more. We also talked about how the railroad industry declines because of car transportation. So all that we covered on Thursday, and now we're picking up a new material today with the airplane industry. So airplanes were still fairly not as reliable at this point. I mean, they still had passenger. They don't really have much passenger planes at this point. So they were mostly mail carriers. They became slowly throughout the 20s. They became a peacetime means of transportation. So you do see some carrier planes, but nothing like nowadays where it's like dozens of people in a plane. Just maybe a handful as far as that goes. As radio equipment and other technology developed, it was easier to make these flights. Two very important pilots that come out of the 1920s are Amelia Earhart and Charles Lindbergh. So Amelia Earhart was famous because she was a she. She does a lot of firsts for a female pilot. She also famously was eventually lost overseas in the Pacific, attempting to make a trip across the Pacific Ocean. But she was a very famous and heroic pilot for the things that she did. Then you have Charles Lindbergh. Charles Lindbergh, kind of the same thing. He was famous male pilot. Charles Lindbergh was the first solo pilot to fly across the Atlantic Ocean from New York to Paris. So he flew by himself, which lasted about a day's travel. So he comes back and gets a lot of hero worship, a lot of celebration as well too. And guys, I'll make sure I'll go back through and play these videos for you so you can see. The PowerPoints for you so you can see these pictures and so forth. So moving on to the next thing, which is standard of living raises. The 1920s was a very prosperous time for the United States. We owned about 40% of the world's wealth. So in the 1920s, the United States owned about 40% of the world's wealth. Annual income rises for all Americans. So the average annual income rises for all Americans from about $520 a year, which was a decent amount of money back then, to about $700 a year. So it rises from about $520 a year to about $700 a year. All this is happening at the same time. Industries created a flood of new affordable goods. So you have our wealth is going up after World War I at the same time that we're able to produce a lot of valuable items that make us wealthy. Okay, so sorry about that. First, we're going to look at electrical appliances. This is a big theme of this unit, and this is something that comes up in the EOC a lot, is the time-saving devices that developed in the 1920s. Electricity came out in the 1880s and 90s, but by the 1920s, many homes now have access to electricity. Average homes, middle-class homes, upper-class homes. So you have a lot of time-saving devices that help people's lives out. Things like washing machines, vacuum cleaners, irons. A lot of these are devices that especially help out women in the household. So I'll go through those one more time. Electric washing machines, vacuum cleaners, irons, refrigerators, all these things mostly are developed that help women most directly. And so the question that often gets asked or talked about in the EOC is what impact that has. It's a big labor-saving development for women. So now instead of having to spend all this time doing the wash or cooking food, they now have more free time. They can actually engage in more free time or pastime type activities for themselves, whether it be join some kind of social club or go out and join a gardening party or play bridge with the women. Women in general, women who stay at home are getting more free time to stay at home and do things for themselves, and that's a big change in this time period. Excuse me. Okay. Electricity is also leading to refrigerators and radios, which is refrigeration's big because now you're able to preserve food a whole lot longer now, for potentially even more than a week or weeks, depending on the type of food. Radios allow you to get more information, more news. Electricity also begins to spread outside of major cities into the suburbs as well. So anyway, electric appliances are a big development in this time period. Then you get to modern advertising. The 1920s is really where advertising becomes more psychological. They begin to think about how can I target people and make them want things to get more consumers. So advertisers begin using scientific and psychological research to target customers and sell more than before. Magazines and newspaper ads often focused on desires and fears of Americans. So magazines and newspaper ads often focused on desires and fears of Americans. So I have a picture of this on the PowerPoint slide, but it's like soap. Soap was big for women, like a lot of like age defying or beauty enhancing soaps or makeups or some kind of creams that would help them look better. That's a very common type of thing. You see a lot of advertisements appeal to males as well too. But magazines and newspapers ads often focus on desires and fears of Americans. They convinced Americans to be the person they wanted to be by buying the right product, and that's what the psychological aspect is. You're trying to convince Americans to buy certain goods, to act in a certain, to act and behave in a certain way. So it convinced Americans to be the person they want to be by buying the right product. It also convinced Americans to buy the things they didn't need, like Listerine, mouthwash. Listerine, no one really used Listerine or needed Listerine originally. You still don't necessarily need it if you brush your teeth, but a lot of advertisements and newspapers convinced people they needed to have those kind of things. Kleenex, same thing. Instead of having a hanky or some kind of rag, you could buy Kleenexes, and you don't have to buy them, but people were convinced they needed to buy them. Images of businesses also got a big boost. Now you have companies either hire an advertising agent or some kind of people in their company to advertise their products. So a lot of companies begin to advertise their own products in this time period as well and try to figure out ways to make their product very appealing to people. Okay? Last thing I have is the ready-to-wear clothing. This just kind of goes with the theme of this section of basically now there's more clothing available that you don't have to go buy at a tailor. You can just go to a store, department store, or some kind of general store and buy clothing that basically fits without having to do a lot of work to get it hemmed or fixed or whatever the case may be. Okay, so we're going to stop the first video there, and I'll come back with another video here shortly.